things are shifting. We've heard for a while that left and right are outmoded terms, but no political party seems to have really taken that on board. But what I'm realizing now, or noticing, let's say, is that younger people are starting to call this out, and the younger generation. So I think there'll have to be a realignment in politics. And this clip from our old friend Nick went viral. So let's have a look.
If you had progressive Democrats and nationalist Republicans working together, let's say to compel the release of the Epstein files, what kind of approval rating do you think that has? 90%? And what if they got together and they opposed foreign aid to Israel? What approval rating do you think that would have? 90%? What if they got together and worked on the basis of a common interest? Do you think that that Republicans or independents running under that brand, do you think that that would become more popular or less popular over time? 4 becomes 8, 8 becomes 16. It snowballs. And we need to propel someone into the White House that is just a populist. And here's where we're going to have to give. This is going to be the compromise, very simple. The left has to give up immigration. That's simple. The left is going to have to give up. Look, we can have equity and we can have equality in the country. We can have civil rights. We can have all those things. But we have to close the damn borders. We have to close it. Too many illegal immigrants. Too many legal immigrants. That has to be the compromise. The left has to give on immigration, and the right has to give on the free market. If the right can come down on health care and on a social safety net and maybe on some subsidies for education, and if the left can come down on the anti-white open border stuff and they can agree that we have a country, that party will win 90% of the vote and rule for a century. That's the compromise. That's the populist compromise. Why is it that for the left, it's like they don't even care about anything else. It just has to be open borders. And on the right, it's like they don't care about anything else as long as it's foreign aid to Israel and war in the Middle East and war with Russia. That's the kind of program that we need. And that's what they're terrified of. They're terrified that the left and the right are going to come together on the basis of stop supporting Israel, on the basis of close the borders, on the basis of restricting money in politics and the influence of the oligarchs. That's what they're terrified of. So this is the blueprint. We have to build on this.
All right. Seemed reasonable. Lots of people are saying that. He put it quite eloquently, and it went pretty viral. I mean, that's got 3.2 million views. Go on.
Well, just to say, the funny thing is what he's describing there when he says the progressive Democrats with nationalist Republicans. I don't know if you would describe Thomas Massie as a nationalist Republican, but if you do, he is a Republican. He's basically describing with the Epstein files what actually happened with pushing through Thomas Massie's bill, because it was co-sponsored between Massie and also this Ro Khanna progressive Democrat from California as well. So that is a unique example where they all came together to push through that bill. But I think really what he's kind of getting at is this... when Tucker came on and criticised Mark Levin and Ben Shapiro recently, and the last half or so hour of that podcast was him speaking with Anna Kasparian. That is the kind of alliance that I think that Nick is pointing to, because Anna has been able to change her views on a lot of things and has kind of pulled back on a lot of the really insane aspects of leftism. She doesn't seem... I don't watch the Young Turks, so please correct me if I'm wrong on this. She doesn't seem to be anti-white anymore, explicitly at least, and she has come down in favour of a lot more strict law and order policies. Despite that, I do see a lot of difficulties and potential pitfalls with what he's advocating here. Asking the left to give up being, like the progressive left, to give up being anti-white. Okay, that's, but he's...
And to give on immigration, which I'll talk about. They're not going to do it. But
the first thing every progressive Democrat talks about is give us more money to give to illegal aliens.
And if he's saying that they would need to give up the concessions for equity and civil rights, well, those pieces of legislation are what propels the anti-white social order.
I mean,
yeah, well, he was quite lenient on, well, yeah, equality fine. He even said equity fine, which is insane. But
I mean, it's not fine.
No, equality, I can but I understand. He's saying you just got to give up immigration, and we've got to give up this free market obsession and this foreign policy neocon stuff.
I think
in principle, it's okay.
He also does seem to be like figuring this out on the fly, thinking out loud in this clip, despite it going viral. What I am seeing here is not a fully fleshed out plan yet. This is just getting the idea out there and seeing how people will react to it.
In essence, though, I think it's correct. If the left would do it, the immigration thing just has to be stopped and then or massively reduced. And the right, I think, does have to look at the free market obsession again. I think those two are actually correct. Personally, not everyone will agree, but go on.
I agree with those general ideas. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's see.
I just wanted to say something because it seems to me that, I mean, I know you have my post there, but I don't understand one thing. If he says right now, close the borders and let's have progressive Democrats and nationalist Republicans work together, and then he's framing it just on the economic bit, how does he keep the other political aspects he frequently talks about? And I don't want to put him necessarily in a particular corner because I don't watch his show. I don't want to necessarily say that's what is on my mind. I will have to make him be that thing. But it seems to me that lots of people he represents are constantly talking about depriving some people from particular rights, especially political rights, political representation. How will he get these groups to the table? Because the progressive Democrats and also many nationalist Republicans are saying, right, we are a society with lots of groups, and these groups are represented in politics to whatever degree or not, whether you like it or not, they are in the US. So how does he get to sit down with them, given the fact that many people from his audience constantly ask for lots of these groups to not have rights as far as politics are concerned?
But
in other words, this seems just economic and also geopolitical when he's talking about support for Israel.
I don't think
there's also the political aspect of it. It's like, right...
they don't seriously call for people to not have rights, I don't think.
No, I'm not talking about civil rights, but aren't they? I'm just asking here. I'm just asking. Aren't they constantly saying that, right, some groups shouldn't have political rights in the US, and the US political rights must be confined to particular groups, which most Republicans are against, and I think almost every progressive Democrat is against.
I'm not sure they've said that. I mean, obviously he says women shouldn't vote. But
I'm
that's just
asking,
common sense.
I'm asking. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure he said that as such. You'd have to give me specific examples. But
again, this doesn't seem to be a fully fleshed out idea yet. Yeah. He's relaunching his America First pack in January or February. So perhaps this is something that they're going to try and pursue with a greater depth.
Yeah, let's see. I mean, inevitably, Dinesh calls him a Nazi because he says this is what he's saying is National Socialism. Nick finally makes his move to put the socialism back in National Socialism. He's taken up Goebbels' point that capitalism is evil and socialism is the heart of Nazism. Nationalism is merely a qualifier for socialism. National is the adjective and socialism is the noun. Fuentes has already responded to that and saying it's stupid. Just because that was the name of Hitler's party doesn't mean he's doing that. Yeah, Stelios had a more reasonable response, which I was going to include before I knew you were on the show today. I was just going to hope I could mention that, then move on, but now you're actually here to annoyingly put your view and ruin my whole narrative. No, but you were criticising him more from a sort of classical liberal perspective or whatever term you would use, but you were saying, well, I don't know, it feels weird to read your own tweet to you.
No, I just think that basically the left doesn't have to give just immigration away. They have to give up on socialism, progressivism, extreme egalitarianism, equity, the hatred of naturally emerging hierarchies, because that's where equality of opportunity turns into equality of outcome with equity. And the right must give up, I think, on anti-intellectualism, passivity, appeals to daddy government, and a progressive parenting style treatment of transgressive and subversive outrage porn merchants. And both have to give up mass migration because they want it for different reasons.
So you agree on that point?
Ecophobia, which is hatred of one's country, is the opposite of patriotism. Is treating virtue as the expression of "I hate my country" sentiment, and utopian rhetoric that makes them pander to resentful people.
I just
Because
realized
lots of people are just not realists.
actually we call that oikophobia, but it comes from a Greek word oikos, so you probably know how to say it.
I mean, it's just a whole debate
Okay.
how you pronounce it. It's not. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. All right. So you had a slightly different take. I mean, yeah, you would probably not like the amount of government that's involved in these kind of statements.
No, and the kind of criticism that conservatives are making of socialists still applies.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the problems with having a command economy and the problems with centralizing the economy that don't go away.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I can definitely come to the table and talk to people such as you, who I think are in some respects a bit more in favor of centralized control, and say things like we should nationalize particular industries.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Well,
I'm a
he's a
realist.
classical fascist,
I'm realist. I think eventually any kind of political compromise will have to involve something of that sort.
Okay. Yeah, well, the more you read into it, I mean, people like John Gray have quite compelling critiques of the free market in his book False Dawn, for example. But it's sort of the right or the classical liberal type person will blame the government, where he'll blame the free market. You end up realizing they're saying almost exactly the same thing, but they're just apportioning blame to a different cause. But anyway, let's carry on and see that actually Charlie Downs had a very similar. I don't know if he watched the Fuentes clip, but he had a very similar.
He almost
point.
certainly did.
Yeah, he said.
I mean, look, like straight after this clip starts going around, and Charlie's like, "I've had an amazing, brand new idea. I love you, Charlie. I'm just saying."
Yeah, he says, "Why is the?" But it's interesting that young people are asking it. Why is the right so wedded to capitalism and Zionism? Some people have criticised sticking Zionism in it. I'm not even going to go down that rabbit hole today. Why is the left so wedded to mass immigration and anti-white racism? Why is social conservatism always coupled with economic liberalism? Why is economic conservatism always coupled with social liberalism? Why are we told that these configurations are the only options? Why are they presented to the public as being in opposition to one another when both seem to serve the interests of the same entrenched ruling class? And so on. And that's the key. I mean, and obviously you've spoken to William Clouston, or Dan did, and I had him on my podcast. He's the kind of person raising this. But this formula, ostensibly what people actually want, particularly British people, isn't really offered, strangely, and Charlie's starting to notice that. And there is a generational battle, particularly in America. I've noticed the sort of neocon free market right, and then the younger people and Tucker
It's kind of in general the post-war paradigm. And frankly, I'm tired of it, like a lot of people are. And I joke with Charlie, but this is something that a lot of people are independently coming to, which is realizing that the uniparty divides within America, within the UK, I would imagine in a lot of other countries as well, but we don't have proportional representation like a lot of European countries do. Either way, this whole setup of the two big parties, which are different in minor ways, but on all of the big subjects like mass migration, like civil rights, like anti-white discrimination, are all agreed. They're all agreed on these same huge things, which are actually far more important overall than the tiny little differences that they have. We're all going, why does it have to be this way? Mm-hmm. Why does it have to be a choice between huge government that hates me and says they like the free market, and huge government that also hates me but says they don't like the free market quite as much?
But actually in reality do all the same things economically as well.
Exactly. Why does that have to be, but one's in blue and one's in red? No, I don't like that. I don't want that. I don't think these are fair choices. I don't think they're real choices.
Yeah, and I started with saying left and right is outmoded. Everyone, especially since Brexit, has been saying that. But yeah, it hasn't actually been any change along those lines. Anyway, on the generational thing, Shapiro sums up his take. Let's just watch this. And
if you're a young person and you can't afford to live here, then maybe you should not live here. I mean, that is a real thing. I know that we've now grown up in a society that says that you deserve to live where you grew up, but the reality is that the history of America is almost literally the opposite of that. The history of America is you go to a place where there is opportunity. And if the opportunities are limited here and they're not changing, then you really should try to think about other places where you have better opportunities.
I want to say I don't get the massive backlash against this, because this is the clip of the interview where he's talking about Mamdani, and he's talking about cities. He doesn't say as many people made it. You can't make a living in your own country, live your own country. That's not what he said. He was talking about cities, and I mean, most of the people I know, they don't work in the city where they grew up.
Well, everybody who I saw responding negatively to this was responding from the perspective of he's talking about New York and cities. I think the reason this annoyed a lot of people, myself included, is one, it completely dismisses and ignores all of the reasons why the cities have gotten so bad outside of like, oh my God, Mamdani got voted. Why did Mamdani get voted in? Is it because of huge open borders policies that have completely demographically shifted? I know you don't care about the browning of America, Ben, but a lot of people actually do. Have the demographic shifts have changed this? People have also pointed out, well, if you're trying to make a good living for yourself, cities are still where the jobs are in a place like America. Everybody talks about how, like Ben has spoken about before, how the Rust Belt and all of these small towns in America have been completely destroyed by economic financialization, where all of the industry has been offshored to places like China. So if you want a good paying job with a good standard of living, you are probably going to have to work in or near a city. So why should it be that I have to work in the city, I'm forced into a position where I have to move away and work in a city, but also don't earn enough to be able to live in the city, meaning that 90% of my life is spent in work and in the commute.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I understand what Stelios is saying as well. I can understand that. And English people, of course, traditionally have moved a lot to find work, and then they sort of set up their castle, which you can't do anymore because you can't buy a house. That's a big problem with that as well. But I think it's the Shapiro scene as just being free market above all else, isn't he? And John Gray had a good quote where he said, the innermost contradiction of the free market is that it works to weaken the traditional social institutions on which it has depended in the past. So this is the kind of problem with it. It kind of destroys itself in the end, in his claim anyway. People that reacted, because I know what you're saying, there's nuance to it, but they felt that Shapiro was just doing his classic thing of shut up, move to get your job. And people say, well, what about our community? Which he didn't seem to care about. If you believe Tucker, who responded fairly aggressively to it, it's just
feeling that way about someone in your own country. Imagine having that level of contempt for a fellow American. You don't even know anything about the person. Young people, they're not entitled to live where they want. They'll live where BlackRock tells them they can live. It's like, whoa. If you had a thought like that, I've had some ugly thoughts. I just admitted having some ugly thoughts. Boy, I would try and push it back and not express it. Ben says it without any embarrassment because he means it. That's exactly right, because he means it. Whew. I don't think that you can win a popular debate with that attitude, because irrespective of the content of your sentence, people can feel the loathing that the speaker has for them. Ben Shapiro does not care about you at all, is not even pretending to care about you. So again, it really doesn't matter what he's selling. That guy is not going to make the sale if people are free to buy whatever they want. It's like, I don't know what that guy's selling, but he doesn't like me. I can feel it right away. He doesn't care at all about me at all. And he thinks so little of me, he's not even going to like put on the dog. He's not even going to like try to pretend to care about me. And a guy like that, whew, he really needs censorship and bullying to succeed, because the free market does not reward a man like that at all, ever. Because people don't like it. Why would they like it?
Okay,
here's another clip.
And some people disingenuously took that out of context and said he's saying that Shapiro should be censored. Of course, he's saying Shapiro can only rely on censorship because those ideas just won't be popular if they actually have to compete.
The argument that has been made is that Ben Shapiro actually benefited from the left censoring voices to the right of Ben Shapiro by making it so that he was the only game in town.
Yeah, it seems quite plausible, doesn't it? Because, and I do think it's a generational thing. Tucker is the kind of uncle representing. It's really sort of Fuentes versus Shapiro, and he kind of is representing that younger generation in a sense. So my claim is that while the right is sort of realizing some of the flaws of it can't all be just about money and free market liberal ideas. The left, if you go back to the original Fuentes clip, they're not quite doing the other part, which is the give up on immigration part, even though it's staring them in the face. Because even if they can't do the cultural part, they could at least say this is suppressing domestic wages. They can't even do the old left part. So they're completely just S-libs on that. Go on.
Can I question you on that?
Yeah.
Right.
If we have time, we don't have much time, but go on.
No, I'll be very fast. So it seems to me that one of the reasons why the US is in a much better state right now than Europe is that the US has a much freer market. So for me, from my perspective, why shouldn't I say, right, okay, I'm open to the conversation of having a minimal safety net, which may be a bit too much for some Americans and a bit too little for some Europeans. But let me say I'm willing to consider that, because I am realistically speaking and pragmatically speaking. And why not just say for me that the problem is we should do the old Milton Friedman thing, which is we shouldn't combine extreme welfarism with mass migration. So why not we just keep the free market, temper it just a bit, so that there isn't massive social frictions with respect to how social inequality sometimes can lead people to crime. It's just an issue of numbers. There are tendencies there. So why not just saying, right, instead of having all this other thing that is trying to be pushed towards me as, the anti-World War II narrative, why should I just not say, well, let's just reverse extreme welfarism and its combination with open borders?
Yeah, I've heard lots of libertarians say that. It's just they sometimes say you can have a welfare state or you can have open borders. You can't have both.
Yeah, you can't
clearly
have
you
both.
Can't have both. Yeah, clearly.
UK.
Yeah, I think that's clear.
I hate that libertarian phrase anyway, because you can't have open borders in any circumstance.
No, you can't. But no one on the right would disagree. They might disagree with the
they
welfare
are
bit.
open for some. For some people, they are open.
What do you mean, like for big financing interests?
Yeah, why not? I mean, you mentioned browning of America before. Lots of people come up on the UK shores on a daily basis with boats.
It depends what you call the free market as well.
I don't.
No. I'm saying that the best way forward is to not have extreme welfarism and open borders. You have to close borders and restrict welfare.
No, I agree. I'm saying that what Nick said was the libertarian thing. You can have one or the other, not both. I'm saying under no circumstances can you ever have open borders, because if you have open borders, even if you do not have a welfare state, the fact of the matter is societies created by by Europeans and their descendants will just be of such a vastly better living standard. Even if you are at the lowest rung of society, they will still flock to our countries.
Yeah, and another thing, a critique of the free market part, though, is that the corporations, when talking about the global free market, of course, corporations want this cheap labour to come in. That's another part that, strangely, the left misses the open goal, where they always say it's the billionaires, but they don't ever say the billionaires are bringing. But it's not the poor immigrant; it's the billionaire. But it's the billionaires bringing them in.
That's what Polanski does. He constantly focuses on the billionaires, but no. But the issue is that what progressive Democrats are doing and the leftists are doing is that they have gone global. They're globalists.
Yeah.
And because they've gone global, they don't think in terms of rich and poor domestically. They think in terms of rich and poor globally. Yeah. That's why almost every person in the working class of Western nations who is a descendant of them counts as globally rich. That's why they won't give up what Fuentes thinks they're going to give up.
Right, and it's good. Here's a good example of Clive Lewis, who you think Clive Lewis can't say anything sensible, but around the United Kingdom march, he actually did say this quite sensible thing about the sort of deracination of communities. And he said that he had a friend who went to the march, and he talked about the way communities have been destroyed, but he can only cite the free market part, of course. He can't do the other part. And he actually then went on to criticize the 1950s intolerance here. So he says, oh, that's not the answer. So they can never do the cultural part and the immigration. They can only do, hey, I'll meet you part way, which is like, yes, I understand that. He says we've replaced collective experience with atomization and so on. And we've lost the affordability and all this kind of thing. So they can do that part. They can't do the other part. And if you see the reaction to Shabana Mahmood just saying maybe, whether she's going to do it or not, but her even saying, let's have a border, they all go absolutely bat bleep, and they say we've now reached a stage where Labour government is taking direct policy inspiration from Nazi Germany, and they say that whether she's the exact same as Enoch Powell. So you just see the left isn't grasping it at all, is my just point there. They're not doing the immigration thing at all. I don't really see them doing it. One of the few people doing it is actually Nick Timothy. He had a kind of imperfect vessel for this because he was special advisor to Theresa May, and she was not going to be able to do any of his ideas. But he actually has a book, Remaking One Nation, and he has it in this article here, where he criticizes the ultraliberalism of the market on one side and the ultraliberalism socially on the other side. And he had an interesting quote in his book that just sums this up. He says, across the party divide, there is a commitment not only to liberalism, but to different forms of ideological liberalism. Markets trump institutions, individualism trumps community, and group rights trump broader national identities. Legal rights come before civic obligations. Personal freedom beats commitment, and universalism erodes citizenship. We're experiencing a crisis of liberal democracy that is driven by the excesses of ideological ultra-liberals. So in the book, he says that some of the actual liberal thinking of Locke et al. Was okay, but what we have now is this what he calls ideological ultra-liberalism. The reason I researched all that is because I was going to have him on my podcast and he had to cancel, but he's someone
Not
who's
that you're salty.
but he's someone who's actually talking about this. William Clousner, you've had on here,
Yeah,
but
very sensible.
very sensible. But they're very few and far between. That is the compromise. And just to recognise your position as well, so people like Christian Liebitz, of course, have savaged Timothy's position, say it's nonsense on stilts. So it is only one argument, but I do think that is where more people are going to go. And you do have question marks over, I'm just trying to pack in loads here, but you have question marks over like reform, where do they sit? Because obviously they came from the Brexit party. They seem to be sort of inherently Thatcherite. At times they talk about nationalising steel and things. So do they really grasp it? I think this is where things are going to move, but are the parties going to grasp it? I don't know.
If you would like to watch the full uncut version that is also uncensored, head on over to lotuseaters.com to find out more.